Hello, and welcome to Western Roman history. On the 31st of December, AD 405, a barbarian coalition of Alans, Suebies, and Vandals crossed the Rhine and started burning their way through the Gallic provinces of the Western Roman Empire, beginning a series of calamities leading to the end of Roman Britain, the fall of Roman Spain, the sack of Rome in AD 410, and eventually the extinction of the Roman Empire in the West. Since these momentous events began under the watch of the Emperor Honorius, a passive but pious director of affairs, tucked away in the city of Ravenna in Italy, it has been his misfortune, rightly or wrongly, to be blamed without mitigation of the disasters of the 5th century. Yet for 8 years, Honorius had no control over Britain, Gaul and Spain. That honour fell to the usurper Constantine III, a soldier from Britain. This video shall look at the usurpation of Constantine III and his brief reign, for without him and the other usurpers, we cannot truly appreciate the disasters that brought the Western Roman Empire so close and so rapidly to total elimination. If you enjoy this video, remember to like and subscribe to Eastern Roman History, my gratitude to my generous patrons on Patreon, and now let us continue. Since the death of Emperor Theodosius I in AD 395, the Western Roman Empire had, in large part, been spared the rebellions and upheavals affecting the Eastern Roman Empire. The Magister Militum Stilicho made himself regent over the boy Honorius, and proved a capable ruler for him. This peaceful state of affairs dramatically changed in AD 402 with the Visigothic invasion of Italy. They were led by Alaric, king of the Visigoths, but was beaten by Stilicho. In AD 405 to 406, Italy was again threatened by a stronger, more ferocious Gothic invasion led by King Radagaisus. These threats to Italy were compounded by attacks by the Franks along the Rhine and the Picts in Britain. While Stilicho successfully met all of these threats with Roman iron, quite drastic measures had to be made to cope, including conscripting slaves and sending soldiers from the Rhine to Italy. The phasing out of a number of coin denominations in AD 402 might also be related to the military and political problems in both the west and the east of the Roman Empire. Had the invasion of Radagaisus been the only major threat for Stilicho to handle in AD 405 to 406, then the situation probably could have been handled and peace restored. It was the crossing of the Rhine by a large confederation of barbarian tribes on the 31st of December AD 405 that changed the entire situation in the west. The invaders smashed through the defences on the Rhine to rampage through the provinces of eastern Gaul, killing, burning and looting their way through the area. St. Jerome plots a rough path for the barbarian advance. First, Mainz was burned, then Worms, Reims, Amiens, Arras, Tournai, Speyer and Strasbourg. Kulikowski's analysis shows the invasion affected Belgica Prima, Belgica Secunda and Germania Prima. Meanwhile, Stilicho was busy in Italy, destroying the horde of Radagaisus at the Battle of Faesulae in AD 406, and could do nothing to help Gaul. At this point, the historian Zosimus describes the first usurpation of Honorius' reign. The troops in Britain mutinied and enthroned Marcus, obeying him as emperor there, but when he did not accede to their demands, they killed him and brought forward Gratian. Very little other than the above quote is known about the usurper Marcus. In fact, in some Roman histories, the usurper Marcus is not mentioned at all. That the legions in Britain felt threatened by the utter devastation in Gaul shows just how ferocious the invasions of the Alans, Suebies and Vandals actually were. Numismatics also helps to illuminate the economic trouble Britain was placed into thanks to the rampages in Gaul. The scholars Moorhead and Abdy have identified that from AD 406 to 420, the silver coinage in circulation in Britain, called soliloquy, started to be clipped. After this period, the size and style of the silver coinage in Britain changed, being used as raw bullion rather than a monetary denomination. The obvious question is why these coins were clipped in the first place. Taken in the context of when this happened, the coin clipping began in response to the barbarians pillaging Gaul. One could argue that since Britain was cut off from the rest of the empire, local authorities started clipping coins due to the prospect of having a limited supply of money circulating in the economy. The fact that Britain no longer had a mint and had not done so for 30 years likely exaggerated the situation. Clipping coins, while reducing their value and weight, meant that the silver clippings could be used as bullion. The uncertainty of the situation, as reflected in the numismatics, is complemented by the swift proclamation of a local emperor, not necessarily as a challenger for the throne, but as an ad hoc emergency measure in the face of foreign attack, with Britain having been separated from the court at Ravenna. The reign of Marcus only lasted a few months, from AD 406 to 407, before he was murdered by his own troops. He was replaced by a soldier called Gratian. Much like the usurper Marcus, very little is known about the 4-month reign of the usurper Gratian, other than he was likely a soldier and was British. It is a mistake by scholars that he was a civilian, as demonstrated by Kulikowski. He was later turned into the character of Gratian Municeps as part of the Romano-British recorded in the chronicles of Nennius and Geoffrey of Monmouth. Gratian was proclaimed emperor by the army, probably to resolve whatever shortcomings led to Marcus's murder. Kulikowski has reasonably speculated that they failed in their defensive task, or perhaps the British troops wanted to go on the offensive and murdered their commanders when they refused. Whatever the case, what we do know for a fact is that after ruling for a few months in AD 407, Gratian was himself murdered by the army that put him in power. The army then proclaimed a private soldier called Flavius Claudius Constantine as emperor. Orosius says Constantine was mainly chosen because he shared the name of Constantine I. This little coincidence holds some weight, since the now Emperor Constantine renamed his sons Constans and Julian, the son and nephew of Constantine I, and both notable soldier emperors of the West. These mnemonic affiliations should only be seen as symbolic and not literal, although a name is a powerful thing, for Constantine I had triumphed over his opponent Maxentius in Italy and defeated the barbarians. Constantine III might do the same to his opponents. The usurper Constantine III appointed 2 Magisteri Militari, Justinian and Nebiogast, and crossed the English Channel ahead of the main army of 6,000 men, led by Constantine himself. They captured Bononia, and from there Constantine III set about gaining the loyalties of all Roman Gaul. It is presumed he faced the barbarian threat and achieved a victory, but nothing is known about how he achieved his supremacy over the barbarians in northern Gaul. Orosius says, as soon as he had seized the imperial dignity, he crossed over into Gaul, where, repeatedly tricked by the deceptive alliances of the barbarians, he did much harm to the state. He sent magistrates into Spain, where they were obediently received by the provinces. Some tribes, such as the Alans, led by King Gaur, joined the Romans. Those Vandals, Alans and Suebi, who did not ally with Rome, remained pacified for the next 2 years. Constantine III then swiftly marched south to Lyon, the new capital of the Praetorian Prefecture of Gaul. He also formed alliances with Rome's neighbours, including the Franks and Burgundians. During the winter of AD 408, Stilicho finally responded to the usurper in Gaul by sending the Gothic defector Sarus to lead loyalist forces against Constantine. The general Justinian was caught by surprise by Sarus' offensive, whose army annihilated the rebel force and slew its leader. Constantine III barred himself and his army in Valence, knowing that its defences were difficult to overcome. Constantine III's Magister Militum, Nebiogast, rode out to meet Sarus and negotiate with him, but was killed. A week passed. Just as hope began to fail for the besieged rebels, reinforcements commanded by two new magistri militari, the Frank Edobic and the Briton Gerontius, arrived. Together, they bested Cyrus's army in the Rhone Valley. After Cyrus's defeat, Arles became the new capital of Constantine III's regime. It was strategically placed to respond to any breakthrough along the Alps. The usurper also placed defenders at the various Alpine passes to block another surprise attack from Italy. The Battle of Valence solidified Constantine III's rule over Gaul and was an ignominious defeat for Cyrus, and especially Stilicho, who faced mounting criticism from the court and Senate. By May AD 408, Constantine III was recognised as emperor at Trier on the Rhine River, which minted coins of him. It indicates that once he had secured himself in southern Gaul, he focused on restoring the Rhine frontier. Constantine III, unlike his namesake, was not, at least at first, interested in deposing Emperor Honorius, but simply sought recognition from him. He minted coins with the legend Victoria Org, indicating he saw himself as part of the imperial college, including himself, Honorius, Arcadius, and Theodosius II. Constantine III was unique amongst usurpers for trying to incorporate every emperor reflected in multiple A's and G's in his coin legends. Also, amid the devastation and the rise of Constantine III, the Council of the Seven Gauls, a regional institution designed to resolve local issues, ceased meeting. Constantine III held sway over Britain, Gaul, and Spain, the latter usually following whomever controlled Gaul, since the provinces of Hispania had no substantial army. During the spring of AD 408, Didymus and Verinianus, the cousins of Honorius, rebelled in Spain. They mustered a force of slaves and locals to form a militia to resist the tyrant. Drinkwater argues that it was the near destruction of Constantine III in 408 that led to the resistance in Spain. With Stilicho preparing another army to invade Gaul again, Didymus and Verinianus saw their chance to act. Constantine III elevated his son Constans, a former monk, to the rank of Caesar, junior emperor, and sent him and Magister Militum Gerontius with an army to deal with the resistance in Spain. The cousins took up defensive positions in the Pyrenees and successfully defeated Gerontius in the first battle. The Constantinians received reinforcements and pushed into Spain, where they defeated the cousins in a battle in the province of Lusitania, after which both cousins were taken prisoner. Constans and Apollinaris, the new Praetorian prefect, returned to Arles with their hostages. Meanwhile, Stilicho wasted no time in assembling an army at Pavia to retake Gaul. He even asked Alaric's Goths to assist his generals in this endeavour, getting the Senate to pay for the expense. The best-laid plans of mice and men oft to go awry. On the 1st of May AD 408, the Eastern Roman Emperor Arcadius died. While the death of this jellyfish-like emperor was not important for the Western Roman Empire, the succession of his infant son, Theodosius II, was. For all of Stilicho's military and political brilliance earlier in Honorius's reign, he seems to have lost it all in his final years. Despite forming, as Wijnendale argues, a well-planned Romano-Gothic counter-offensive against Constantine III, Stilicho decided to make all of his many priorities, including the alliance with Alaric, the barbarians in Gaul, the usurpers from Britain, and imperial court politics, secondary to his travelling to Constantinople with 3 legions to secure the throne for Theodosius II, on behalf of Honorius. While rumours of Stilicho wanting to depose Theodosius II are likely false pieces of propaganda designed to justify Stilicho's execution, it is not the best look for the Magister Militum that either he wanted above all to extend his regency over Constantinople at such a critical moment, or block Honorius from yet another attempt at independent action just to maintain his own absolute control over affairs in the West. Wijnendale has also pointed out that the Roman troops mutinying may have been in response to Stilicho's plan to work with the Goths. These were the same Goths who only 6 years earlier had invaded Italy. This was bad enough, The object of the campaign of using Goths to fight fellow Romans was to add insult to injury. The irony is that had Stilicho's plan to destroy Constantine III gone ahead, it probably would have worked, at least hypothetically. So totally did he miscalculate this move that his protege at court, Olympius, and the Pavian army turned on him. His plan to placate Alaric backfired. His campaign against Constantine III never happened and left the Emperor Honorius with the dreadful idiot Olympius as the leader of the government for the next few months. It is with some justification that many Romans blamed Stilicho for the chaos that followed his execution in August AD 408. The Loyalists' loss of Stilicho was a grievous blow and ended the momentum of the war against Constantine III. But his downfall was very much one of his own making. We do not hear much about the activities of Constantine III for the rest of AD 408 to 409. We are told by Frigeridus that the tyrant spent his time eating and drinking. However, Constantine III's eye became fixed on Italy to the exclusion of all else. In Italy, the renewed hostility towards Alaric made Constantine III a convenient ally to Honorius and his court. However, Constantine III made the shockingly stupid mistake of secretly executing Didymus and Verinianus a little before Honorius's first embassy to him. At the beginning of 409, Honorius sent an imperial robe to Constantine and shared the consulship with him, as attested by a Greek inscription from Trier. Constantine was possibly a suffect consul, since Emperor Theodosius was also consul. Honorius may not have had much choice in recognising the British upstart, since he believed his cousins were both captives. Furthermore, his new government, led by Olympius and then Jovius, focused on overcoming the Goths, and could hardly fight another war against the usurpers in Gaul. In the summer of 409, Constantine III sent another Jovius to Honorius, whom apologised for executing Didymus and Verinianus, and offered to send his army to Italy to fight the Goths when they advanced upon Rome for the second time. However, Constantine III cried crocodile tears, for he mustered his armies in Arles, not to save Honorius, but to eliminate him. Constantine III's obsession with Italy led to the neglect of the rest of his empire in Spain, Gaul and Britain. In AD 409 to 410, Trier was sacked by the Franks. Also, Lyon ceased minting coins. In the spring of AD 409, Gerontius, alienated by Constantine III's mismanagement of affairs and concerned with being replaced as Magister Militum with Justus, rebelled against his former master at Tarraco. The Caesar Constans was proclaimed Augustus by his father. With his newfound imperium, Constans led a large army commanded by the Magister Militum Justus against the rebel in Spain. To head his rebellion, Gerontius appointed his comes domesticorum Maximus as emperor. He minted coins from their headquarters in Tarraco. Gerontius and Maximus were outnumbered. To even the odds, Gerontius sent letters to the Alans, Vandals and Suebi in Belgica to break their treaties with Constantine III and restart their rampages. They were happy to oblige. They moved south and started burning their way through Septimania. The provinces of Aquitaine, Narbonensis and Novem Populana were pillaged, and by autumn AD 409, the city of Toulouse was besieged. However, Gerontius had no control over the barbarians he had unleashed upon the empire. They burst through the lightly defended Pyrenees and poured into Spain, unchallenged by the Romans, because Gerontius was engrossed with the war against Constans. Meanwhile, Zosimus records rebellions in Armorica and Britain. Gerontius won over his soldiers and incited the barbarians in Gaul to revolt against Constantine. The latter was not able to oppose them because most of his army was in Spain, which allowed the barbarians over the Rhine to make unrestricted incursions. They reduced the inhabitants of Britain and some of the Gallic peoples to such straits that they revolted from the Roman Empire, no longer submitted to Roman law, and reverted to their native customs. The Britons, therefore, armed themselves and ran many risks to ensure their own safety and free their cities from the attacking barbarians. The whole of Armorica and other Gallic provinces, in imitation of the Britons, freed themselves in the same way by expelling the Roman magistrates and establishing the government they wanted. In August, AD 410, while Constans fought Gerontius, and after the Goths had sacked Rome, Constantine III marched with his army around the Cottian Alps and came to the river Po. It was there that the usurper received news that his chief ally and conspirator at Honorius's court, Alubicus, had been executed for high treason. Constantine III returned to Arles, having achieved nothing. At the same time, Constans returned to Vienne with his battered army, having failed to suppress Gerontius and Maximus's revolt. Constantine sent Edebic to the Rhine to gather Frankish and Alemanni auxiliaries and whatever Roman forces he could. The retreat of Constantine III from Italy proved to be the beginning of the end for his already crumbling empire. In AD 411, Gerontius pressed his advantage against Constans. He marched with his army around the Pyrenees and moved across Gaul, routed Constantine's remaining army, and headed straight for Vienne. Maximus was left in charge of Tarraco while Gerontius was away. The British general made agreements with the barbarians not to attack Tarraco. The rest of Spain was left to them for the taking. Like lightning, Gerontius captured Vienne, killed Constans Augustus, and then marched down the Rhone valley to Arles to besiege it. At the same time, Emperor Honorius had changed his strategy. The Emperor Honorius, seeing that nothing could be done against the barbarians when so many usurpers were opposed to him, ordered that the usurpers themselves should first be destroyed. Honorius soon found the perfect statesman for his needs and the perfect remedy for the usurpers in Gaul, a grizzled officer called Flavius Constantius. Unlike Stilicho, Honorius worked in partnership with Constantius rather than a subordinate, as had been the case under Stilicho. Constantius and Ulfila reached Arles, where Gerontius's army defected en masse to the Loyalists, whereupon Gerontius and a few of his remaining associates fled. Taking over Gerontius's siege, Constantius and Ulfila prepared to meet the reinforcements led by Edebic. This army fell straight into the Loyalists' ambush, and most defected to Constantius or fled. Edebic also fled, but was beheaded. Very quickly, Constantine III and his younger son, Julian, having lost all hope, surrendered. Trying to save himself from execution, Constantine III abandoned his imperial vestments to be ordained as a priest. Constantine and Julian were taken prisoner, but were sworn they would not be harmed. From there, they would be sent to Honorius. 30 miles from Ravenna, orders sent from Honorius arrived demanding the pretenders' heads in revenge for the execution of his cousins. They were then beheaded. On the 18th of September AD 411, their heads were placed on pikes at the gates of Ravenna. Meanwhile, Gerontius fled from Arles, but his remaining forces mutinied because they disliked him for being a strict disciplinarian and his recent humiliation by Constantius. The soldiers surrounded him and his wife in a barn, which they set on fire. Gerontius and his wife committed suicide. The usurper Maximus abandoned his imperium in Tarraco and fled into exile in Spain, later being pardoned by Honorius. So much for Constantine III. The impact he had on Honorius's reign was immense. Initially, Constantine III did very well, and unlike his two predecessors, he was not murdered by a disaffected army. His usurpation reflects the prime reason for most of the usurpations of Honorius's reign, that being local leadership and security during a significant, prolonged military crisis. Constantine's success was when he fought for British and Gallic interests and sought recognition within the Imperial College. His undoing came when he started to revert to, as Drinkwater says, a more centripetal obsession with Italy, quickly losing sight of the original reason he was proclaimed emperor, leading to the rebellions of Gerontius, Britain, and Armorica. However, with Constantine III's death, the reasons for his original enthronement were still present. It is not surprising, therefore, that within a few months of Constantine III's death, the Gallic aristocracy proclaimed another emperor, Jovinus, to lead them. In a broader scope, Constantine III's rebellion was an unmitigated disaster for the Roman Empire. Britain had expelled its Roman administration above the city level and was no longer subject to Roman laws. In AD 410, Emperor Honorius sent letters to the cities of Britain to look to their own defences, officially ending Roman rule. The Rhine frontier started to buckle. Gaul had been left devastated and divided. Spain was in total anarchy, with the region being turned into a war zone. Many of these issues had occurred because of Constantine III's rebellion, his early successes being completely undone by his later failures. Drinkwater also described the reign of Constantine III as a disaster, further saying, the ultimate consequence of his decision not to attempt to destroy or expel the Vandals, Sueves, and Alans in Gaul was the hamstringing of the Western Empire, when in 429 the Vandals crossed Africa. In the shorter term, his dislocation of the alliance between Stilicho and Alaric brought the Goths into Italy and thence into Gaul, by invitation and from the south. Therefore, without a fight, and around the flank of the traditional line of defence in the Rhine, the Gothic presence created internal frontiers, distant from the Rhine, and completely changed the shape and pattern of life of the continental West. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to like and subscribe for more. The next video will be about the usurper Jovinus, and this has been Western Roman History.